Star Wars Racer Revenge for the PlayStation 4, a limited run game that came out that has all of a sudden absolutely skyrocketed in price. And many people are wondering, well, what's going on with this? Why is it so expensive? Well, it's because Star Wars Racer Revenge, a PlayStation 2 game brought over to the PlayStation 4 by Limited Run Games with a physical copy, has a deep, dark, sinister, nefarious secret. You can use it to hack your PlayStation 5. And the emulation and homebrew community is absolutely thrilled with this new discovery. So I want to talk about what is going on with this game, how it allows the exploit to be done, but I also want to update you guys. Before you run out there and spend literally hundreds of dollars on this game, you might want to wait a little bit unless you're very impatient, because there's been a big update for this exploit that the PlayStation 5 now has that could change your mind on wanting to pick this up. So what's going on with this? Are things going to get easier for accessing different homebrew programs for the PlayStation 5? That's what we're going to talk about in today's video, pal. If this is your first time on the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. So, what is going on with this, and why is it so exciting? You got to look at what the PlayStation 5 modding scene is right now, and it's been pretty quiet. There's been a few things here and there, but a lot of these things relied heavily on the PlayStation 5 browser, which of course Sony has come along and kind of fixed the issue with. This is interesting because with this disc-based game, you can now essentially access things that you're not supposed to be accessing via a jailbreak up to firmware 12.0 on the PlayStation 5. And I mean, firmware 12.0 on PS5 is it's a pretty new firmware. And being able to pop in a disc that allows an exploit that can allow you to do different things with that exploit and potentially sideload different things and whatnot, and it has a very interesting sort of ring to it. You know, being able to run different payloads, getting into custom firmware, there is a lot of potential that can be done with this thing. So how does it work? How does this game, Star Wars Racer Revenge, work when it comes to this? Well, you kind of got to look into the nitty-gritty of the situation. Essentially, it is an exploit chain that uses the PS4 game disc, that being Star Wars Racer Revenge, to eventually gain some low-level code execution on the PlayStation 5 up to that firmware of 12.0. The main thing by using this disc instead of using the older methods, which, like I said, require the web browser, is that you don't have to use the web browser. And Sony has been cracking down on the web browser. So essentially, what does this mean? Well, it means quite a few things. It works conceptually because the physical PlayStation 4 disc will basically... It works on the conceptual level because it is a disc-based entry point, meaning that you don't have to have online sort of stuff. This is coming to us from a Mast 1 core vulnerability that has been discovered, so shout-outs to them. But basically, because it is a disc, you don't need the PSN login, you don't need to do a system update, and it works offline. So that's why people are rushing out there to buy this game, because it allows you potential access, I should say, to be able to do things like different payloads that you can load onto the system. And because this is a PS2 game being emulated on the PS4, the code execution actually happens inside of the PS2 emulator that the system is using, because it's the same PS2 emulator that they used on the PlayStation 4. So basically, the kernel access that is now being looked at with this sort of stuff will allow you to then jailbreak the system, do things like homebrew, and of course the fact that this is firmware 12.0 makes it very attractive. This uses physical media. This means that this is something that pretty much anyone who has access to the disc can then utilize, and it doesn't require any sort of online connectivity. Now, of course, you'll run into things where if your firmware is higher than 12.0, this is kind of pointless to you. I mean, you're not going to be able to have too much fun with this. And clearly, it's still in its infancy because of the fact that I mean, there's no programs like you could really run with this, so it's not really a piracy tool. You know, average people aren't going to really be able to access it. You can always run the risk of your console being banned, and if the firmware gets updated, you know, to sort of block this, if you choose to update your firmware, you're going to run into some problems with this. But I think it is a very attractive thing because you can essentially run unsigned code and custom software on this, which opens up the world of possibilities. How do you think other systems that end up getting fully hacked, you know, your 3DSs and your Wii U's, for example, how do you think those systems end up getting fully hacked? It's because of little things like this. It's because of small little things that people find with this and then are able to access all sorts of different stuff that, of course, companies don't want you to access. Now, I'm not saying that people should look at this from a piracy method or anything like that. Of course, and I say that just to pretty much cover my own ass here with this video. But I do think it is very interesting that it opens up the world of possibilities to be able to do some pretty cool stuff on the PlayStation 5. But like I said, everyone's been talking about this and talking about how Racer Revenge is kind of the catalyst for it. You need the disc in order to access these sorts of things, but there's actually been quite an interesting update when it comes to this, because it does seem like that it might not be the only game that you can actually do this on. So basically, it's going to be using PS2 save data exploits, and there are some other games that are potentially able to do this, such as Grand Theft Auto 3, Grand Theft Auto Vice City Stories, Jack's X Combat Racing, Lego Indiana Jones, The Original Adventures, and a few other games with this. But this is going to be potentially a way that will circumvent needing that expensive disc. So should you run out and buy the disc right now? I mean, probably not. You know, unless you are someone who is like a capable person of being able to hack things. You can make your own payloads. You can make your own software. You can make all this sort of stuff. It's kind of pointless to do right now. You know, and I think a lot of people are looking at the headlines, oh, the PlayStation 5 has been hacked, and thinking, well, great. Now I can, you know, I don't have to buy PS5 games anymore. I can just download. I mean, that just goes into a whole different realm of possibilities. I guess maybe there's a way that you could potentially run a disc off of, you know, loading it onto an SSD, an external SSD, and then using that to access games via your PlayStation 5 that, I don't know, maybe a friend has a disc or something like that. But this is still definitely very early in its infancy. You know, there's not going to be a lot of programs coming out. There's not going to be a lot of stuff coming out in the immediate future. Obviously, things like emulators could end up coming to the system now, which would probably run really well considering how powerful the PlayStation 5 is. But it's more so an interesting story about the potential future for PlayStation 5 modding and the PlayStation 5 homebrew scene. And I think this is a way for people to get into it and kind of, you know, look at it from a different perspective. There's always going to be some sort of way and some sort of thing that people are eventually going to find with these systems. You got to remember, these companies have, you know, how many employees that sit there and try to make these systems as secure as possible, but there's always going to be some sort of vulnerability. There's always going to be something, like I'm sure when they were making the PlayStation 5, they were like, you know, I wonder how Star Wars Racer Revenge is going to play on this system. I wonder if there's any sort of vulnerabilities with that. Like, no, you don't think of things like that. These are things that just pop up from very talented and very creative individuals within the homebrew scene. So that's essentially what's going on with this. And I do think you're going to start seeing some potential results. So I guess if you're super interested in this and you are running firmware 12.0 or lower on your PlayStation 5, I would just keep it, you know, unless there's some big brand new game that requires a firmware update or something like that. You might want to keep your PlayStation 5 as it sits right now, because while there's not a whole lot happening with the development scene as it stands right now, you know, by the end of the year, we could be we could be singing a very, very different tune. So that's what's going on with this. I hope you guys are now a little bit more informed, and I may have misspoke on something. A lot of this is just based on research that I've been doing on it, but I think that's kind of the gist of it and how everything is working. It's not the biggest deal in the world right now, but it could eventually be a big deal. Let me know what you think of this in the comments section down below. Do you have a copy of Star Wars Racer Revenge and you're thinking of selling it? I would probably go ahead and sell it now if you're looking for some money in order to, you know, pay some bills or something like that, because I do think that this is going to open up a can of worms for other games to be able to use this access point that don't require a physical disc. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Hit the bell as well. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.